Hello everyone, and welcome to the Game Engine programming series where we write a game engine from scratch. In today's video, we'll finish updating the geometry processor and a few lines of the level editor's code in order to use the new vertex types that we introduced in the last video. We continue where we left off, and the first thing to do is to update this function that computes how much memory we need for packing a given mesh. We need to update this function to account for the two buffers that contain vertex information, as well as include the room needed to pack the element type and the element structure size. So first we get the size of the position buffer and then the size of the elements buffer. As I already mentioned, we also include the elements type and element data size. And finally, we add the buffer sizes. Next, we have to actually pack the new buffers and element information. However, before we do so, let me express my dissatisfaction with the way I'm writing this data to the buffer. As you can see, I'm using memcopy to write different types of data, and each time I also need to update a pointer that points to the next location within the buffer where we'll write to. Although this works, it's inconvenient, hard to read, and also I could easily forget to advance this pointer, which would result in corrupted data. To make this process a bit less jarring, I'm going to add a new utility class that does pretty much the same thing, so we don't have to worry about where we write the data in a buffer. First, I add a new header file and call it iostream.h. Although I'm not sure that's a proper name for it, but let's go with it for now. In here, I'll add two classes for reading from and writing to a binary blob of memory. Those of you who are also watching the green episodes in which I work on the editor side are probably already familiar with the C# binary reader and binary writer classes that I've been using for the same purpose. The difference is that the C# classes are part of .NET API and safe to use. The ones that I'm going to write here are not as safe, as is the case for many things written in C++, and we need to be careful how and when we should use them. So let this also be my disclaimer for using these classes. They are not intended to hold any persistent data. As long as they are used locally within the same function call, then we should be good. With that out of the way, we need to disable copy and move, because obviously we don't want to move the instances around and copy them. It's okay to share a reference to the same instance though. Let's start with the reader class. In the constructor, we acquire a pointer to the buffer and we set the read position pointer to the start of that buffer. Then we need a template function to read primitive or fundamental types such as int, float, bool, and so on. I forgot to assert that t is actually a fundamental type, so I'm probably going to do that in a later video. We also need a function that reads an array of bytes from the buffer. The caller is responsible for making sure that the buffer pointer points to a valid block of memory with enough space to copy the specified number of bytes. Sometimes we are not interested in some parts of the buffer that we are reading. I'll add a function which we can use to skip over an offset within the buffer. And finally, I'll add a couple of accessor functions to get the buffer, the read position, and the read offset from the start of the buffer. Two more things that I should mention are first the fact that the class doesn't know how big the buffer is, so the user of this class is responsible for making sure that they don't read past the end of the buffer. Second, the class is meant for a linear read. That means that it only reads in one direction and you can't go back to read parts of the buffer that come before the read position. I can totally understand if you're uncomfortable with this kind of class, so if that's the case, feel free to add all kinds of bound checking and additional member variables that are needed in order to do so. Let's continue with the blob stream writer class. It's largely the same, so I'll copy and paste the reader class and modify it to write to memory instead. This time, we do require a buffer size, because we don't want to corrupt our memory by writing to the wrong location. Here we have a template function that writes a primitive type to the next location in the buffer. Again, I need to add an assertion that type t is actually a fundamental type. We do check if the value size at the right position doesn't exceed the end of the buffer. Next, we need a function that writes an array of characters to the buffer, which is rather simple. It just copies the array to the buffer. I also create one that writes an array of bytes and is exactly the same as the one before it. The rest of the class is pretty much the same as the reader class. Now let's add the IO stream header in geometry CPP and use the blob stream writer for packing our vertex data. First, we write the length of mesh's name, followed by the name string. Next are the LOD ID and the element data size. We call getVertexElementSize to get the element size and write it to the buffer. Then we write the element's type enumeration, number of vertices, index size, number of indices, and the LOD threshold value. Finally, we need to copy the position buffer, element buffer, and the index buffer. For position and element buffers, we simply copy the bytes to the buffer. For the index buffer, we need to first convert the indices to 16-bit values if needed, and then copy the indices to the buffer. Of course, the buffer type must be cast to the proper type, which in this case is a pointer to byte array. This code looks a lot cleaner now, won't you agree? The last step is to update packData function, where we allocate the buffer into which we pack the imported scene data. Here we create the blob stream writer that writes to the allocated buffer. Similar to mesh names, we first write the length of the scene's name string followed by the name's character array. Number of LOD groups is basically the number of objects in a scene that are going to be saved to a separate asset file. Then for each object, we write the LOD or object name, number of meshes within the object, and finally the mesh data. To pack the mesh data, we pass a reference to the blob stream writer to pack mesh data function which we just updated. At the end, we assert that the number of bytes that were written to the buffer equals the expected scene size in bytes. On the editor side, we also need to update the code to use the new vertex data. First, we need to add the elements type enumeration. Here we only need to know what information we could expect in vertex elements, so we don't need to define the full set of combinations. In the mesh class, we define a constant for the size of vertex positions, which is simply 3 floating point values. Instead of vertex size property, we now have an element size property. We also need properties for the elements type and the 2 buffers that contain vertex positions and vertex elements. Now where we use vertex size property, we need to replace that with element size. In addition, we need to read the elements type from the imported buffer. We can compute the element buffer size by multiplying element size and the vertex count. And finally, we read position and element buffers. Obviously, we also need to save the new data to geometry asset files and also read it when we load the mesh from an asset file. Of course, now we have to update our WPF mesh renderer to use the position and element buffers as well. Where we read the vertex data, we need to split this for loop in 2 loops. The first for loop simply reads vertex positions. The second for loop is only run if we have vertex elements with normal information. If the buffer contains joint information, we need to skip those because we don't need them here. If we have a full tangent space, that means that we also have UV sets that we need to read. Again, we don't need tangent vectors here and we can skip them. Finally, for skeletal meshes with color information, we skip the color elements. Now we need to re-import the FBX files in order to test our changes. It seems that at least for the non-skeletal meshes that we are testing here, I didn't make a single typo writing this code, which improves my confidence in my mental abilities. The good news is that for now we have everything that we need in order to start working on sending content data to the engine for rendering. Therefore, starting with the next episode, I'll be working on the engine side of accepting content and loading the data to the proper modules, which in the case of geometry is the graphics renderer. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Thank you so much for joining me and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you join me on Patreon, you'll get access to the code on GitHub, so you don't have to type everything over from the video. Plus, there are also other nice goodies and rewards exclusive to my Patreon supporters. Please use the link in the video description to check them out. I hope to see you next time. Until then, take care and happy game engineering!